Hello. Hello, my loves. Hello, my loves, and welcome to Monique and Sydney's Open Relationship. I am Monique,
I am Sydney.
and we want to welcome y'all here today, babies. And Daddy, what's the topic today?
The topic is God always watching and
Are you a God shamer? Do you shame people in the name of God?
do ya?
Now, how did we come up with this topic, Daddy?
I have a good friend named Jeremiah Kamara who, if you get a chance, go on YouTube and look up slave sermons. But we were having a conversation in reference to what he always has heard and what I have always heard people say God is always watching.
Yes.
Hence, we are here today to talk about God.
Is God always watching? Like, are you, do you feel like you're always being watched under the name and the guise of God? Because they say there's nothing you can get away with. Because why?
God is always watching.
They say if you tell a lie, who hears it?
God is always watching.
They say if you steal, who saw it?
God is always watching.
They say if you cheat.
God is always watching.
So if God is always watching, why do y'all do it? If God is always watching and you lying,
Why do you do it? Let's go to the line,
let's
baby.
find out. Hey, you on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Hey, Miss Monique and Mr. Sydney.
Hey,
Hey, baby.
I'm calling from Jackson, Mississippi. And first of all, I just wanted to say to the both of you guys, I love you all.
We love you,
And
baby.
to answer your question, yeah, I think God is always watching, but unfortunately, we're just living in times which have always been times where people just don't care. They care more about what their church members think, thinking that they're pretending them, but all the time you're not pretending to nobody. You just don't care, not even about God. Because if you can't pour nothing on the inside, why would you try to pour something over on your brothers and sisters? So the whole thing about it, people just don't care, Miss Monique, Mr. Stevens. And it's okay because I can't put nobody in here and I can't put nobody in heaven. I can only pray for people and be the me that I can be.
Come on, baby. That's why we love you, sis. Come on, y'all. Is God always watching?
is God always watching?
And, oftentimes you'll hear people, they'll only give it to God when they're in a crisis. I'm going to just pray about it. But it seems like when things is on and popping, they thank God, but they don't really give it to God. But it seems like when you're in a crisis moment is when,
Well, you ask God for help, and then when you do right, like we were having a discussion, and Brother Jeremiah was like, when he helped an individual out and gave him some money, he basically said, "Man, I got to give it to God. That's why I got this money." And he was like, "Well, you might need to give that money back to me because I'm the one who gave it to you. Okay, so you giving it to God." So, is there, reality based in your God is always watching? And do you shame people with God because you feel as if they're not being moral or doing what God would want you to do?
and here's another one, Daddy.
Kick it.
Is God always watching a way to put us in fear? Was that a way to control us, to make us fearful, to not really be who we are? And like my daddy say, are you one of those people? Are you one of those people that always got a message from God telling you to tell somebody else something? God told me to tell you, and I want to ask them, has God ever told you to mind your damn business?
Uh-oh.
Like, has God ever said, mind your damn business? Well, let's go to the lines and see. Oh, I did it wrong. Hey, you on Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you calling from?
Hi, this is Danielle. I'm calling from Florida by way of Baltimore, Maryland. How are you both?
Hey,
Hey,
Danielle.
hey.
I wanted to actually comment. I'm not watching you guys right now because I chose to just call in about is God always watching, and
Yes.
if so, why do we do what we do?
Yes.
All right. I do feel like that God is always watching, and the God, whoever you choose to be your God. With me, you know, I've been raised to know that God exists, and also based off my own experiences with God, which some may call karma. But I feel like that if you do something, you know, as if with our parents, you know, I look at my mom before she passed. You know, she was my God. I listened to her. I watched everything that she did, and if I didn't listen to her and I did things she said not to do, oh, I was punished. So I feel like, you know, I don't want to say karma, but I do feel like that God is always watching, and I think that we should be accountable for the things that we do ourselves. You know, whether or not if we do something wrong, then we know that you're going to suffer the consequences regardless. But we're human, and we're here to make mistakes. You know, things are going to happen.
Now, just to make sure we understood you clearly, when you were growing up and you did wrong, you said the primary person who was watching over you was who?
Her mother.
For me,
Your mom.
my mom.
Right.
My mom.
Would you
For
say that?
example,
I was just going to ask you. Would you say that you were more likely to do something wrong when she was right there watching you, or more likely to do something wrong when she had her back turned?
when she had her back turned.
Got you. And we appreciate you calling and sharing what you shared.
Thank you, baby.
Very much. And the reason why I asked that question was because, as you just heard our caller say, she was more inclined to do something wrong when her mother's back was turned than when she was watching. And what Jeremiah was also discussing is that people really don't believe that God is watching all the time as much as they believe it's important to say that God is watching you all the time, because if you were really believing you were being watched with the same magnitude that you believe that, or can say, I did wrong 9 times out of 10 when my mom or my daddy was not watching versus when they did, because they right there looking at me. I ain't gonna do nothing wrong. They right there looking at me. So if we really believe the Creator, the all-powerful, those who say that they're God-fearing are what they are, then why is there so much wrong that goes on if you really believe that God is watching? Or do we, here's another part, believe that it's best to get along with the individuals around us that we say that God is always watching?
Come on, y'all. We're talking about it. The call-in number is 470-282-1802. Is God always watching? And do some of the things you want God to see? Let's pause on that for a minute. Some of the things, do you want God to see? And here's another question I had, Daddy. And this may sound like I'm trying to be smart, but I'm not. How could God watch everybody at the same time?
Like this.
Okay, see, you playing.
Okay.
But I'm saying though, if he's watching, whatever people consider God to be, how could it watch everybody at the same time?
All the time. Like,
all over the world.
Like you just got finished brushing your teeth and then you look over and be like,
watching.
You just got finished making love to your woman. Well, that was so damn good, baby. You rock my world. And then we...
Right.
Stop playing.
Now, I know some of our hard, strict Christians would say, blasphemy, that you're making fun of it. No, we're not. We're really trying to get us to understand it.
Well, and have an honest goodness question, conversation in reference to it.
Now, what does omnipresent mean? That said, he is everywhere.
That's it.
Okay, is God watching all the time? Let's go to the lines. Hey, you're on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
This is Felix from SoCal.
Hey, Felix, talk to us, baby.
Please.
I just want to say, Monique, that you're awesome, sis. You guys are both a powerful couple. I've been following you for a while. And I just came across your video about is God watching. And what I want to leave on the air is that there's always someone watching everywhere. And you have to ask yourself one question as you go through life is, what you want your legacy to be. You know, I heard the last caller talked about, you know, she was more tempted to do something wrong when no one was watching. But if you tell yourself there is always someone watching, God is watching, your next door neighbor is watching, a stranger down the street is watching, what you want your legacy to be. So because everybody's watching, just do the right thing. Do the right thing. That's all I wanted to say. Monique, I love you. I follow you. Sid, you guys are both awesome. Continue to do what you do, empowering people, and I will always be inspired. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you.
We love you back, my sweetness. How beautiful.
And look on what he said. If we could even take it a step further, what if we had the audacity to do the right thing, even if we believe no one was watching?
Come on.
What if we had the audacity, the gumption, to say when nobody's around, we're going to do what it is that we're supposed to do, because there is always someone watching when you do whatever it is that you do. And as long as you're there, someone is always watching, and that's you.
You hit that right on the nail, Daddy, because we start getting caught up in outside and what the outside think. What the outside think, what you might look like, what you might say, how you might dress. The moment you start going inside and you say, is that wrong for me? Then you wouldn't do it if it's wrong for you.
Come on.
Let's go to the lines. Hey, you on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Oh my God, Monique, is this you for real?
It is my baby. Hi, sweetness.
Oh my goodness, I got you. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Okay, I apologize now. I have been watching you for so long, and you have been. Oh my goodness, you have been a mentor for me.
Thank you, baby.
And I thank you for what you're doing. See, me, I don't know you that well because I, never seen you on TV. It's just growing up, seeing someone on TV and then reading certain things, but just following my own spirit. Monique, I thank you. Now I'm calling in about the question about if God is watching,
Yes.
and if it is, why we do the things that we do. And so I have a question as well. If there's only one God, why do we have a lot of different dimensions of religion? Why do we have different religion if there's only one God? And I want to say that if there is only one God, how come the things are happening to us as well as happening, and saying that in different religions we have power, but we don't know how to activate it. We really don't know how to stop doing the things that we're doing if it's only one God. And if it is, the question is, why are we doing the things that we're doing? I heard the caller say, my mom, I didn't do the things in front of my parents and my mom, so I did it behind her back. So if their God is always watching, why are we still doing the things we're doing? And I want to answer that because of what we were taught. We were taught that to do things behind people's back, to sneak, to do those things, and because of slavery, and that's my perspective of it. That's why we do the things that we do, because we got cut off from what we knew what to do. And then we picked up something else, and that's why we just only mimicking what we've been taught to do.
Come on.
We love you, baby, and we're going to answer that question for you. Stay right there. We're going to answer it. So she's saying, if there's just one God, why is it all of this?
And I think that's for the individuals that believe it's only one God. But what we can agree to definitively is this: whether you believe in one God, many gods, no God, what we can agree on is that there are many people. who have many different opinions, who have many different agendas.
Mm.
So it may be part of the reason why you have the Hindus who came up with, who spoke about Brahm, but then you have the Jews that talked about Abraham, that ironically has the same exact story as Brahm. And then the Christians who followed suit with Abraham, and the Muslims as well. But the story had originated over 4,000 years ago with the Hindu religion. So what we can say is, definitively, is that, or what I'll say is, what we can't say definitively is where all of those things may have come from, why they manifested, how they manifested with definitive notions. But what we can all agree on is there are a variation of people and a variation of stories who have a tendency of repeating the same thing, but just in a different kind of way all over the world. There was more than one Messiah who was resurrected from the grave in different stories from around the world. It was just that this one seemed to have stuck. And I'll say this before we go into it. We were watching the other day, it was a show on the History Channel, not just books banned from the Bible, but it was talking about the history. They said that during the time of Jesus' death, there were literally over 300 messiahs that were allegedly messiahs and put to death, and Jesus was obscurely known at that time. And though as obscure as he was at that time, he's extremely well known at this day and age. Someone would ask the question, why? How is that? So,
Well, we know how you can whisper in somebody's ear and say, let that same story get back to me. And it could be 5 people. By the time that story gets back to you, it has become a totally different story. And I think that with the whole thing with religion and God and Jesus and Satan, and when we say, is God always watching? And you'll hear people say, like we said earlier, God is always watching. Well, what is it that God is watching for? Like, what is it? What is it that he's, or what is it watching for? Is it watching to see if we're going to do the right thing, the wrong thing, the in-between thing? Because the God they explain is all-knowing, so they already know all the things you're going to do. So somebody would also question, what is it that what is it that God is watching for?
and then when you start diagnosing it closely, the gods that people speak of has never done anything wrong. The gods that people speak of, they've created multiple stories that don't align. Like, if God knew you before you knew yourself, why would God have to implement and impose all of these tests upon these individuals to see if they were going to pass the test when he knew who you were before you were? Because if I know, unlike my wife, that Jackie Joyner Kersey can beat me in a race, unlike my wife, why would I challenge Jackie Joyner Kersey to a race like I'm a win? But see, that's what she did, okay? That's what she did.
I came this close.
She came that close. So why do you challenge people? There are these different stories that are told. And again, this is not a knock on God, because God never showed up to be knocked. It is just a question in reference to the individuals that say that they know this God that never showed up. I'll end it there. I was going to say something about
No, Daddy, I want you to say it.
And speaking with Brother Jeremiah, he made a very interesting point. He said, if it wasn't for the Bible, if it wasn't for these books referencing God, how would people know about God? Being that he never showed up.
Come on.
However, if no one ever told you that UFOs existed, no one ever told you about them, there's enough video proof that they exist. But people will say there's no such thing as life outside of this planet, yet God was not terrestrial to this planet. So you even contradict yourself when you define your own God, because God would have to be an extraterrestrial in order to be, if he was not from this earth.
You know, too, Daddy, because some people are responding and saying, it's just the word, it's just the word, it's just the word.
Mm-hmm.
You got to just believe the word. Is that what you would tell your child? Just believe it because I said it. Don't research it. Don't look it up for yourself. Don't think about it logically. It's just the word. And then someone put, religion is a form of slavery. Well, if you just tell me to believe something, but you can't make it make sense, do you just believe it?
Because now it goes back to what our earlier caller says. Do you buy into God, and is that the one you fear, or do you fear the people around you that say that you should buy into God?
Come on, y'all. Let's go to the lines. Hey, you on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Oh my God, Monique, this is Aaron Chambers.
Hey, Aaron.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, I can hear myself. This is so weird. Hold on. Monique, I just wanted to let you know I absolutely loved you on the Parkers. I loved you on Precious. I loved you on I Could Have Been Your Stalemate. I loved you on so much stuff, Monique. Oh my God.
Thank you, baby.
Oh, this is so crazy. Oh, I got it. Okay, so my thing is I was raised in a pretty religious family, but I'm not. I can't really say that I'm very. I can't really say that I'm very religious, though.
Yes.
So, I kind of had a falling out because of. I don't know what you think about gay people or anything like that, but I kind of happen to be.
Well,
that
baby,
way.
welcome to our show because this is the No Judgment Zone, so we love everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much, Monique. So basically, like, you're asking, like, if we feel like God is watching, and I think that everyone should obviously do the right thing, but at the same time, as long as you're not negatively affecting someone else, why is it anybody else's business? You know what I mean? And I feel the same way whether you're gay, whether you're bi, whether you're lesbian, whether you're whatever you want to be, as long as you're not hurting anybody else physically or, hating other people, why should it matter? You know what I mean?
And let me ask you, since you're on that title, because you make a great point, you're on that subject. What are your thoughts, and have you experienced? And I think I know the answer, but I'd like you to share in reference to: have you been shamed based upon who you are with God? Has that come up in your neck of the woods and in your experiences?
Okay, so you mean, like, are you asking, like, if I have asked myself if God would accept me or not?
No. Have you been shamed? Has something transpired specifically that you felt you were shamed by God? It could be self-imposed. It could be imposed by others. Last week we were having a conversation in reference to prostitution, and while we thought that if someone was a consenting adult and this is the life they wanted to live, that it was better that we created an environment that legalized it for those who were adults who chose to embark upon that realm, versus we're not going to create a safe environment, and instead we're going to have the abduction of women and kids being violated in the manner in which they did, and people were saying that it was morally wrong, God wouldn't like it. So it was a level of God shaming in that way. So have you ever experienced something, whether self-imposed or what others looked at as something that they imposed upon you, the God shaming effect?
So one other random thing that I want to mention, another thing that I loved, Monique, was Soul Plane. That was I know these are some old stuff, but Soul Plane was real good. I love that movie a lot. I just wanted to let you know you did a great job, Monique, okay?
Thank you, baby.
Because, I mean, you remember, you're like, you ain't never seen a super chocolate double deluxe woman like me before. But if you ever, I loved it so much.
We love you, sweet
I
baby.
love you so much, honey.
And keep living.
Anyway, so I definitely have been shamed. I really have. I've been told that, it's not okay for being gay. Like, actually, I spoke hypothetically to a brother of one of the churches I went to,
way back in 2008, which I haven't gone to church since then, other than funerals and stuff. But he told me that that hypothetically speaking, that if I was gay, that I wouldn't be accepted into heaven. And that really, really hurt me. It made me think like, okay, so I can't change the way I am. So as long as I'm not physically hurting someone, why does it matter? Like, you know, I believe in peace and love and equality for all. And I'm not here to judge anybody else. That's not my job. It's not my job. And it's the same thing as the prostitution. Like, I know a lot of even male dudes, guys, that are actually, you know, male prostitutes. And that's the thing, like, that's the only way they know how to get money. And if they're getting mad money that way, you know, they could do their own thing. And it's the same thing with women, too. Like, you know, I feel like you can be whoever you want to be as long as you're not hurting anyone.
Come on, baby.
We appreciate you.
We love you, sweetness. Come on, y'all. We're talking about it. Is God always watching? And are you a God shamer? Do you put God in front of everything? Well, God going to do this. And God, if you don't do this, God said. Did God really say it? Or is it other people's words that said God told them something? So really it's some he say, she said.
He say, she say.
Because wherever in any of the Bibles has it been signed by God? I'm not saying it's true, not true. Wherever has it been signed by God?
And if we were to take that same logic, that because it was inspired by God, that it was essentially written by God, then that would be the equivalent of saying that babies made Huggies because Huggies said it was inspired by babies.
Come on now. We're talking about it.
That's all we're doing.
Is God always watching? And do you feel that way? And if you feel like God is always watching, how perfect of a line do you walk? Let's go to the lines. Hey, you on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from? Hello? I did it right.
I know you did. Just disconnected, baby.
So we're talking about it, my babies.
You want to give them the number?
470-282-1802. Is God always watching? And if so, what is he looking for? What is she looking for? What are they looking for? Let's go to the lines. Hey, you're on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Hi, Monique, and hi, Sydney. This is Al. I'm calling from Brownsville, Texas.
Hey, baby.
Hey.
Hi. So, I have a question, Monique and Sydney. I do want you to ask the question, though, because I know that there is a question. I know this is my first time on the show, and I know you ask questions, we discuss things, but I do have one question. I'm trying to get in touch with God again because I was raised Catholic, and I want to get in touch with him again. I want to get close to him. I want to have a relationship. I want to start praying. And whenever I tell people that I pray for them, I'm kind of lying, but it's because I just haven't found my relationship with God. I was wondering, can you give me some tips on how to get a better relationship with God?
I think that it's what others have said. Whether you believe or whether you don't, that's something that journey doesn't go outward for you to ask others. It's allowing you to go inward to ask yourself. How do you find your connection with your God? And no one, they can try to tell you, but in all honesty, because we are made from star stuff from all around the universe, in which we originate from different places, the best person to tell you how you work internally is you. So that would be an answer that, in our humble opinion, that only you can answer that.
Yes, baby.
Yes, I totally get it. And Sydney, if you want to ask a question, what was the topic for today?
Is God always watching?
And
Yes.
And have you been shamed with God for the things that you haven't done or the way you want to be? Have you used it? Or has it been imposed on you? Either one of those questions.
Sure. I mean, I've gotten advice from people who are Christian or claim to be, and they tell me to do something, and then they don't act like a Christian themselves. They're not Jack the Ripper, but they're not acting holy. So I've definitely been shamed when they should be looking in the mirror themselves.
We appreciate you.
We love you, my baby. Come on, y'all, we're talking about it. Is God always watching? Or are you one of those people that shame people in the name of God? And I'll see people like that. And they're telling people they're going to hell and they're going to, this is happening and that's happening in the name of Jesus. But then don't somewhere say in there, thou shalt not judge?
That's the kicker.
Oh.
That is the kicker. Because if you write down thou shalt not judge, then why is it that the individuals who say they are connected with God's soul are doing so much judging? Why? They should have it. SFC is the new religion.
What is that?
Snitching for Christ.
Come on
Okay.
now.
I'm gonna tell it. I'm gonna judge.
Snitching for Christ.
Right.
Are you a snitcher for Christ?
Are you snitching for Christ?
And-
And who you snitching to?
Oh, when were you signed up to be the snitcher for Christ?
Come on.
Oh, God is watching. Let's talk about it. Hey, you on with Monique and Sydney? Who's this and where you're calling from?
I think we lost them.
Well, let me set it down. God is always watching. Now, I'm going to tell you, as a child, we didn't go to church. Like my father used to always say, I don't believe in nothing I can't see, feel, touch, smell. That's what he would always say, right? But I remember one time my mother faked a heart attack on her job. And the first thing my father said was, Jesus, please. She faked it, Daddy. She faked it. She faked it.
Now y'all trying to figure out why this young lady is how she get down. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
My mother faked a whole heart attack. And anybody that worked with her at Weston House,
Not half of it.
no, just what I'm talking about.
A whole.
She faked a whole heart attack, fell
whole
out, everything,
Coca-Cola.
shook in the floor, all that. Okay, so, but my father, who says he was an atheist, the first thing he said was, when they called the house and said there's been an emergency, he said, Jesus, please don't take my Alice.
Come on now.
Now, I'm like, but you say you don't even deal with this cat.
However, you gotta understand, repetition brings on retention, and despite the fact that we might say what we don't believe, when it's been embedded in you so much, you will verbalize that and not know who it is that you're verbalizing it to. Because someone had to say, well, it has to be a creator. And the creator of us is not necessarily the creator of us all or everything in the universe. While at the same time, what created all of the universe, we are a descendant of and from. If that makes sense. There's a story in reference to the Anunnaki who came down and with the beings that were already here intermingled its DNA and tried it on a multitude of times until they found the, if you will, the vehicle of body in which seemed best to them. And Enlil and Enki, who derived from Anu, who was the chief or the god, if you will, of them, which was technically their father, believed that we all derive from the same things of the universe. So we are all connected, despite the fact that this being had created us. So not hypothetically, what I'll say is this. If we were to reverse engineer life itself, in my humble opinion, I'm not Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist. I just ask you to challenge me because it doesn't have to be my answer. I'm just looking for the right answer, if you will. But we don't know of anything that can create something without energy. What is it that can be created without energy? Things that just sit there have potential, and then there's kinetic energy. So if everything and or nothing can be made without energy, is it a possibility that God, which is everywhere, is simply energy? Because this is what everything is made up of. Is it possible? And that in the body of energy, there's positive, there's negative, and we know it as yin and yang. Could it simply be that? And everything that we see, what created us may have been advanced beings that put us here. That individuals with a primitive language and not all of the words that we have now, no dialogue or no words for nuts and bolts technology, were able to call them gods because they were more advanced than us. And we took that story and now we have to refine it and call it a god. Is that a possibility? I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it's not, but that's the reason why it's a challenge for people to say it is this or it is that.
Someone said in the room, Monique, is everything okay? Because your face, your face looks tense. Everything is beautiful. And I guess what you're seeing on my face is I'm open up to learn. I'm open to hear it. I'm open to not settling for, well, somebody just said it. So when you see my eyebrows go down like that, I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense. But we've been so conditioned to be so fearful that we don't even question it. We don't even ask the questions. And we just say, okay, if that's what you said and if that's what it is. And another question I had, Daddy, they say that God is a jealous God. I've heard some Christian people say that. God is a jealous God, and you give God all the praise. Well, then how come God ain't never shown himself to get the praise? How come? If God is so jealous, how come he don't just open up the sky, stick his face out, and say, praise me?
But what we've only heard was people say that about this God, but we've never heard God say that or show that himself. And I believe it was Lauren Brock just asked the question, do you believe in the Holy Ghost? I'll share something with you. Again, watching the History Channel. You got to check it out. There was a story of the Hopi, I call them the indigenous people, but their tribe were of the Hopis. And the guy Sokolov, he goes there, he's a reporter for the show Ancient Aliens, and he goes, and I believe they're in Arizona, and they're showing the carvings in the wall of the shaman meeting these beings, these ghost-faced beings, and these beings were like 10 feet tall, and they said that that was a holy experience. And what they referred to these beings with these ghost face as the Holy Ghost.
Shut your mouth.
Now, this was in stone, etched, before we read and writing, before there's paper and all of that. And they refer to that as the Holy Ghost. Is there a possibility, again, of the trickle-down effect where we hear these terms, the Holy Ghost, because they actually saw these beings? Whereas people are telling the story about a being that they heard about. Again, a story, the Bible, was written 50 years after Jesus' death, started on, and completed 200 some years later, and then revamped a multitude of times. Is there a possibility anything along the way may not have been accurate?
And why are we so afraid to find out? Come on, y'all. Hey, you're on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Emily, how are you, Monique and Sydney?
Wonderful, baby.
Super.
Can I tell you a short story?
Of course.
My grandfather, it was a religious nut, and he had said to us secular music is a sin. And for secular music being a sin, years later I got to hug Bootsy Collins.
Come on now.
So that's when I knew God loved me more than Grandpa ever said.
Yes.
And the first words out of Bootsy's mouth, God bless you. I'm
Yes.
That's right. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweet sister. Come on, y'all. We're talking about it today. Is God always watching?
Someone just said something about Peter. And again, I'm no Bible theologian by a long shot. We were watching books banned from the Bible. And there is a book called The Apocalypse of Peter. And in the Apocalypse of Peter, there's a moment where they say, and again, don't take my word, look up books banned from the Bible. And in this story of in the Apocalypse of Peter, it says that Peter, when everything after the revelation was brought back to what it was supposed to be, what it was promised, there was the clear division between heaven and earth. Everything was wonderful on the earth, but there was heaven and hell. And Peter looked down on the individuals in hell, and he said to Jesus, like, you're a merciful God and have such forgiveness. How long are they going to be in hell? Are you going to really keep them down there for eternity? And Jesus looks to Peter and says, I'm going to tell you something, but I want you to keep it to yourself. He said, what? He said, they're all going to be set free. But we had to tell them that they were going to be damned to hell so they wouldn't go around doing wrong things. Why ever be a book that's banned from the Bible is the question that I would ask.
Well, Daddy, I have another question.
Ask it.
What region of the world were they in?
Jerusalem. They were in technically Africa, but Jerusalem.
This is
The Middle East. Super.
where I have my questions. And please forgive me, y'all. And for those who are saying we've not read the Bible, I know for me, you're right. I have not. But if we go all the way back then, and they were in a place called Africa, where are they coming up with these names? Peter, Paul, John, David. Where are they coming up with those names, y'all?
David who?
Peter who?
Jenkins.
Paul who?
Watson.
John who?
Hancock.
Were their names really that? Or once again, are we just accepting of what it was? Because I've been to Africa. I've been there. I've been Nigeria and Johannesburg. I've been there. The brothers I met didn't have those kind of names. They did not. So again, even when it comes down to the names of these people, was that really their names? Or some will say, well, why does it matter? Because it's in the book. It's a story that was written down. But we're not questioning anything. We used to work with this guy one time. And he got a little uptight because we were asking him questions about the Bible. We were just simply saying, explain to us what you believe in. And he couldn't. And he got really angry. Well, the word is just the word. Okay, but explain to us what that word is. Well, what did he say? You're carnal minded. Did I say that right?
Carnal.
Carnal minded, which means you think simple. You're right. And because I think so simple, explain it to me simply. And that couldn't happen. So I think we've gotten so used to and conditioned into buying into little sayings and little myths that we just throw out there.
And faith, as it pertains to individuals, the acronyms we have for that is false assertions introduced to humans. Because oftentimes when people want to separate you from reason and logic, that means that you're able to buy into what is illogical. And if you're comfortable in doing that, we're saying, listen, if that makes you a better human being because of whatever your belief is, the thing about us is we're not looking for people to follow what it is that we are doing. It's like we told the caller earlier, follow your heart. Because what we're not doing is here to judge anybody for what it is that they do. But if you're an individual that speaks so highly about God and all that is, then the last thing one would do if you're truly a follower of God, I would believe, is be the one who doesn't cast that first stone, because that would imply that you are without sin. Ever so humbly. There's no place like home.
We're talking about it, y'all. Is God always watching? And are you a people shamer in the name of Jesus? Because y'all know, lately you'll hear somebody say, well, God put it on my heart to tell you this. And God put it on my heart to tell you that. Well, what did God put on your heart about you? Or those your own thoughts? But the only way you can communicate it is if I attach Jesus to it. That's just like LOL. You can say any goddamn thing you want to. If you put LOL behind it, you know I was playing.
Come on.
We're talking about it. Hey, you're on with Monique and Sydney. Who's this and where you're calling from?
Think we might have missed him.
Hi, Monique and Sydney.
You
This
got
is Jolandra. I'm actually calling from the Metro Detroit area.
Hey, baby.
Talk to us.
And okay, so I just tuned in, and I wanted to tell you guys that I was like, at one point in my life, I was where you guys are at now, to where like I kind of turned away from religion and Christianity, and I kind of went into how Sydney was, talking about what if we came from, higher beings and the whole energy, everything is energy and whatnot. But I would say that one day I picked up the King James Bible and I began to actually read it. And I took my time on the sections, to really understand what the Bible was saying. And what I can tell you is that the Bible it's not what we've learned all these years in the Catholic and Christian churches. It's actually our history. If you really look in it and break it down, like, this is actually our history. This is our original nationalities. But, like I said, this will be something that you guys will actually have to read, because if you don't, then you're always going to, have a lot of questions. Like Monique was saying, well, why is, God a jealous God and this and that? Well, in the Bible, it'll tell you why he's a jealous God, because the nations begin to have idols, like the Egyptians. They begin to worship animals and the sun and stuff like that. And so God's way of, or the creator, which that is not his name. I mean, God spelled backwards is dog. It's the Bible is translated from a Hebrew transcript, so God would actually be Elohim. Okay, so when God talks about being jealous, he's actually just saying that he's against us worshiping other false idols, or how like people today, maybe they do satanic stuff and they worship the devil or Lucifer, things of that sort. So that is what God is actually saying. Because I saw someone in the comments, they said, well, God doesn't want us to be jealous, but he is a jealous God. Well, it kind of makes sense. The Bible is talking about the children of Israel. And so they were the chosen children of God. And so when he took them out of bondage, out of Egypt, his covenant with them was for them to remain close to him and to hold his commandments. So as we know today, the Jewish or the people of Israel, obviously they're not people of color, So there's like a whole, it's up in arms about, well, who are the real children of Israel. But I would recommend that you guys actually take some time and just actually read the Bible, because I do believe that the Creator is actually waking up a lot of people of color. And the fact that you guys are now questioning things and pulling away and actually, saying, well, you know what, this doesn't make sense. And I do believe that it's all in the divine, way that it should play out to be. So
let me say, may I share this with you? May I share this with you? Because
go ahead.
You make an incredible point based upon what it is that you've read. However, what I would suggest that you also do is read up on King James, who was a murderer.
Yes, that's the one that I have. Yeah, that's
right.
Actually where I'm reading.
I want you to read up on King James to understand why in Ephesians 6:5 it says you should serve your earthly master as you do your heavenly master. Why would a king say that to people and put that in a book that would be associated with religion? So when you read and understand who it is that wrote that book and who they wrote it after,
right,
then it may allow you to feel the exact same way or feel differently. It's kind of like someone who wrote a book in reference to love, but they are a murderer and killer. It's a challenge for you.
Absolutely.
It's a challenge for one to buy into what a person who has done wrong has done, but they're telling you to essentially serve your earthly master as you would your heavenly master. And as luck would have it, they just so happen to be king. It's the equivalent of, there are people who say, why does it matter the color of Jesus? How come him being white is not acceptable? Why does he have to be black? And the reply that I've always said was, I don't say that there's something wrong or right with it. However, what I will say is the first images of Jesus, he was black before he was white. And you can see that on early day coins. So what happens is you must understand what is the agenda of individuals who are telling you, when you go back in history and you look at religion, you can see the trickle down effect today as to why we believe those who are rich, powerful, and successful are blessed. Because back in the day, with the Catholic Church, the priests would go around and they would be able to bless the wealthy, for the wealthy were able to pay the priest for those said blessings. If you were not able to pay for those blessings, then you would be construed as you're not blessed and you are not highly favored. Hence, if we travel fast forward into the future of right now in the present, you can see that same dynamic. So there is nothing wrong with what you believe. What you believe is what you believe. But here's the wonderful thing about what we believe and possibly what it is that you believe. If you believe in love, which in our humble opinion, our acronyms for that is lifting one's vibrational energy or lifting our vibrational energy, we're going to live on the same street in peace and harmony. Now, the fact that you believe in Jesus, the fact that one believes in Islam, the fact that one is a believer in the Hindu religion.
Oh no, I don't believe in Jesus. I know that's a made-up fictional character.
What we're saying is
his real name. And
what we're saying is it doesn't matter what you believe in as long as you believe in love and you believe in treating people in the way in which you would want to treat people, in the way in which you would want to be treated. The aspect of religion becomes not relevant to how you interact with people. It only becomes relevant to that most important person who is enjoying that said religion, and that would be you.
Mm-hmm.
We thank you so much for calling in,
I just
sister.
want to say one last thing, and I won't talk for too long, but if there's just one last thing I could say,
of course,
I do agree with you saying that people should not get carried away with religion, because that's never mentioned in the Bible. The Most High never wanted us to go with the things of the world. And then also in Revelations, when there's a description of who we call Jesus, his skin was to be as if it was burned in the furnace. His eyes were of a flame of fire, and his hair was of white like wool. And so when we look at today's image of who Jesus Christ is, everything is total opposite. His eyes are blue and his hair is brown. So that's a clear indication that we don't need to just, go with everything that's in the Bible. It's obviously a lot of truth and a lot of lies mixed in. So I would go off of, like you said, your own spiritual awareness, and definitely a good vibration of good energy will always keep the planet at a good balance, or the earth at a good balance. So I totally agree, and thanks for letting me in, guys.
Thank you for
my
calling
sweet
in.
baby. Oh, y'all.
And that's an example right there of how we as people can differ in opinions. But what we are not different in is that we're appreciative of love. So whoever you choose to give thanks to, praise to, when you're really in tune with that being, that power, universal energy, universal principles, whatever it is, when you're truly in tune with what and who it is that you believe in, whatever it is, you don't need confirmation from anyone else, because that's something that comes from within, and our humble opinion.
And you know what I think happens oftentimes too? It allows us to look outwardly and not inwardly.
Mm-hmm.
When our sister said, read the Bible, because it'll answer your questions. But in the same breath, well, I know that that book has some lies to it. Some truth mixed with some lies. Well, how do you determine what's the truth and what's the lie? When you know that there are lies in it, when you know that the man that wrote the book was a murderer and a molester and all these things, but we're still going to say, well, I'm going to read it.
And Nikki Love You Woman says, you are the creator of your own world. And the question I would say is, are you not? Are you not the creator of your own world? Because when we hear people saying, and that was my way of saying I agree completely with what it was that she was saying.
Yes.
But oftentimes when you listen to the principles that are associated with God, they take you off the principles that are associated with being a mature adult. Because as a child, what our parents and what you as a parent, if you are one, is gearing your child for is to be responsible so that you can stand on your what? Your own 2 feet.
Come on.
So when you say whenever you have a problem, lean on God, at that point, you're saying to yourself, if you always leaning on God, if you always leaning, fall into the arms, there's a level of maturation. Because if you dating a man or you dating a woman that every time y'all got a problem, they're going to call on their dad. They're going to call on their mama. Why they got to be involved in our relationship when we're going to be the ones that's got to take care of it? But you're going to do the same thing to a being that you speak of but has never presented themselves to you. Is there a reason why anyone would question that? Is all I would say.
And why wouldn't you question that? Well, Daddy, we got to it.
We got to it.
It's about that time for us to say, Run DMC and Jam Master Jay. Did I bust it down with that one?
That's how you do it.
We want to thank y'all, my babies, for each and every one of y'all that join in, that tune in, that call in. We want to thank y'all because y'all could have been doing anything else in this hour, but y'all decided to come and hang on out with me and Sid doing Monique and Sydney's open relationship. So thank you, baby. Tell a friend, tell another friend, and tell how many more?
A minute more.
10 more, Daddy.
Okay.
Times 10 more. So thank you, my sweetnesses. If you get a chance, make sure you come out to Vegas to see the show Monique Does Vegas. And we love you, my babies. And my daddy always says, the mind is like a parachute.
It is no good unless it's open.
We love y'all.